Hello everyone, welcome to Excited Nuclear channel. So today we are going to see about some Dunder method, or you can say the magic method. So what are Dunder method? Dunder method or magic method, also called as a special method, and basically these are predefined functions or method in Python that allow to define, or you can say that allow us to basically code how object is going to behave in different scenario. These methods are named with double underscore before and after the name. Like, of course, you have seen that init method that we have created in our last class. That means student class, and also there are some other methods like string add and so on. Now, these are the method exactly what we are going to see about today. So, what are they commonly used for? So, they are commonly used for overloading operators, basically adding, subtraction, and all those other things, customizing object string representation, iterating over the objects, handling object comparison, customizing the behavior of built-in function. So these are the main, you can say, the why, how, and basically why these are used, commonly used for. So here I have written all of that. Uh, And the other thing that left us is that, so why are they called Dunder method? That's the question that you must be thinking about that. Okay, why giving such a dreadful name to some functionality? So we are going to see about that. So Dunder is short for the double underscore. So that's why they are called Dunder method. And these methods are essential for interacting with Python core functionalities. So keep in mind that these functions are nothing but just the core of how the Python core functions are going to interact. Okay, uh, these are some common things that you must be aware of. Now, basically, I am going to show you now the methods that are essential for interacting with Python core functionalities, and these are going to be somewhat like a code render method and what else should I tell you? Yeah, maybe that's all. Basically, I will tell you about the code render method today. Let's start with, without wasting any time, let us explore some common render method. And in this method, basically, first of all, what we have is self method or underscore init. So let's start with what we have been seeing for the past 2 days. And so this is going to be our first init method. Now the purpose for this method is nothing but initializing an object when it is created, and also we have already seen it in the previous example. And there are also another thing that we must see. Okay, let's move it to the other line to view it. What is going in the actually next line? Okay, so as you can see, this init method does nothing but just it is going to initialize an object when it is created, and we have already seen that. So the uses, it is used for setting of object state when an object is initiated, or sorry, initiated. got some confusion. And for the example of it, let us create a class student here, class, and in it we are going to define our init function. So as you can see, we are just defining the way that we have defined the last time. And for now, let's put pass, or maybe let's just complete this function. Dot name is equal to name, and self dot marks is equal to marks. I hope this is clear to everyone. What we are doing is we are doing nothing but just initializing this class with these two parameters that are name and the marks. And the self parameter is nothing but just the you can say it also indicate to the object definition that okay, this whole you can say class is going to have this some methods and parameters and objects and everything else. So this is what it is, and now it's time to move on to the next part, and that is 1.2 string methods. And for this, the purpose and the uses are as follows. And the purpose and the uses is here. Okay, let's put that into some new line, and let's comment this whole thing so it does not mess with us. So as you can see, the purpose for this dunder method, or you can say this underscore underscore string method, is basically the string representation of an object when it is printed or converted to a string. Basically, how you must be seeing that. Okay, rather than you can say telling you like this, what I am saying, let me show you by an example. Let's say I am writing a print statement, and in this, what I am doing is I am just going to print a tuple, right? And when I run this code, you get it. Okay, this is what a string representation is. So now, for it to understand, so basically, how where it is used. So it is used whenever you are using print or a string statement. That means, let's say if I am going to put string function here, right? I am basically typecasting it to the string. And when I try to run this code, as you can see, even after putting the string here, I am getting this class tuple. So that means this is a string representation of this class, and the class name is tuple. So we are just going to replicate the similar thing in our student class, and let's start by putting, or maybe what we can do is we can just copy it from above, paste it here, and let's define a new function string. And in this function we are just going to define return, or maybe f return student self dot name, or maybe, alright, I forgot to pass the self argument here. It must be something that you must always remember, that if you won't pass a self argument, it is not going to work. So with marks, And in the marks, as you can see, when I was typing self and when I putting dot operator here, I'm getting the recommendations. And this is how we have created actually the our, you can say, the class for the student. Now let's create an object here, s1, and this object is also going to be a class, and the name, let's say my name, and the marks is my marks for now, this, and let's print this one here. So let's do a simple experiment. First, I will comment this whole thing out, right, and try to print this s1, and let's see what we get. As you can see, when I am printing the this s1 here, I am getting a, you can say, string like, sorry, it may be not visible to you yet. Yeah. So as you can see, whenever I am printing s1 directly, I am getting a string like main dot student object as at this location. So what this means is we have created a student and that student object is stored at this particular memory location. Now, what if I include this whole statement and again try to run the same? Now, the difference should be clear to everyone that at first, when we have no, you can say, string magic method, we got this type of string. While when we define a str, or you can say dunder str method, we get a string, something like, okay, student name, student, then the student name, and with the marks, and the student marks is printed here, and then finally we are getting this whole line whenever we have included our string method. So this should clear the, you can say, the uses of this string method. That means how and where it is going to be used. Now, without defining, of course, now the next thing is REPR method, or you can say the representation method. Now let us start with the our next function, or you can say the method. Now for this REPR is here. Basically, we have printed, okay, now let me just comment that out. So for the purpose of this REPR is similar to string, but it means to be more detailed and formal string representation of the object. It is primarily used for debugging. So basically we are defining something that actually help us clean our code and help us see where it is breaking and how to correct that, right? And so the uses of this REPR is basically uses of this is when REPR is called. Basically, REPR is called when you use a wrapper or object or inspect it in the interpreter. So rather than you can say telling you, let us start with an example. And for this, let us also take, as you can see, here we have REPR, and let's try to run this. Yeah, yeah, as you can see, we are getting some kind of basically it missing some kind of argument. So rather than calling it like this, let's call it like this. So whenever I am calling this REPR, I am getting a class tuple again. Basically, of course, it is similar to what we have here. Now, what if I pass something like, and for the sake of, as you can see, when I put REPR on the tuple directly, we get a something like this class tuple. But when I put a 1, 2, 3, 4 list in it, we get a tuple of 1, 2, 3, 4. Now this is the, you can say, the behavior of this REPR module or method. Now let's add this to our class. Now of course this is going to be a progressive one. So we are just going to copy the above thing and then going to paste the same thing below and then make the changes. Now this time I want to create a, you can say, REPR rather than a string. So what I am going to do is I'm going to just remove the string here and in this statement, let's make some changes so it is visible. Okay, this should actually be working. Student Shivam 99 marks. Okay, this should do. So I'm just going to copy the same thing, and when I am pasting that in here and calling the, you can say, REPR method or function here and running it, I get the string that is present in the REPR function. So of course it is much more similar to what a string is, but we can make it more detailed and more formal to basically help us debug the solution. So maybe what we can do is we can just simply think of it as a replacement of string, right? Nothing more, nothing less. Now, what left is, of course, what I'm thinking is let's make two part of this video because if I keep, you can say, recording this video, it is going to be a longer one and we get too much later. So let's start with this next video with our, or maybe, yeah, we will just go through it. So next part of this render method connection is this add function. Now, what this add function purpose and the uses is, and the purpose and the uses for add function is something like this. So when I try to comment this, yeah. So the purpose of this method is it allows you to overload the plus operator to define the custom addition behavior to of your object. So how it is used is you define this method if you want to add two objects using the plus operator. So basically how this is happening is if you have watched our, you can say, playlist, you must be aware of, and I am talking about the basic level one. If you have watched our basic level playlist, you must have been aware that we can concatenate strings like, okay, one plus, plus, and let me just kind of, so you must be aware that whenever I'm doing some kind of string, you can say concatenation, we can done it by using the plus operator or addition operator. So how this plus operator is working? So basically at the back end, all the strings are stored as a str method or you can say str class, and this class must have an add function or add method. So when I say dot dot add, you must have seen that, okay, we got a method in it, and it takes some argument, and it returns some self plus value. So I hope this is clear. Now, how to implement that in our own class? So for that, let us create our class. Mm, mm, mm. Okay, I have copy pasted it here. So we have a class here, and as you can see, we have written a add function which take a self argument, as well as what it take is it takes some other argument. What other is nothing but just the marks. So what I am going to say is I am going to create two students here, and that also have been prepared for you. So I have created two students. Now what if I want to add the marks of all these two students? So what I can do is total marks is equal to x1 plus x2. And in the, you can say, in the traditional condition where we don't have any kind of add function, and when we try to do something like this, we should get an error. And of course, because we haven't defined any add function here. Now, when we define an add function here, and then let's try to print this total marks, you will get to see what you will get to see. You will get to see that, okay, when I define an add vendor method here, we get the sum of all the marks, sum of the marks of the students that we have created, or the objects that we have created. And why is it happening now but not before? Because before we did not have any kind of add render method, while this time we have a add render method, and we get the desired output, and that is the sum, basically the totaling the marks of the students. Now, in this example, basically what we are doing is we are defining how the plus operator behaves when adding two student objects, and basically it is going to add their marks. So with this, we have also completed the add operator. Now it comes to the equal operator or equal operator. Maybe rather than copying two things alike and different. So now is equal method or dunder method. It is basically used to compare two objects for equality, and what it is doing is it is basically doing the similar thing that this add is doing. Basically, we are defining how this equal to operator is going to behave, right? So this allows you to basically define how the object should be compared. Yeah, comparison. So um, basically, let me just show you basically how this equal works. So as you can see, we are just comparing the two strings, and we got a just equal operation in our string function or string class. So in the similar way, what we are going to do is we are just going to define our class, create some student, and then try to see how this works. Now I have created this code here. First of all, let me close this interpreter. So what we are going to do first you are going to of course comment this equal operator, and then try to run this, and as you can see it return us false, right? Now what if we actually define an equal operation, and then it returns true? So what's the main difference is happening that is occurring here? So what is happening is, or let me just show you. Basically, this customizes the behavior of equal to basically the comparison operator for comparing two student objects based on their marks. But what was happening at the previous case was it was actually comparing the two objects itself, and of course that these two objects are not the same, and that's why it returned false at first, which can be seen here. But later, when we define a you can say EQ or equality comparison operator or Dunder method, we get something like, okay, it compare the marks of two students, and basically, and if the marks are equal, return us the true. So this is what was defined, and it when it satisfies the condition, it returns us the true statement. That means, of course, these two classes are equal, and now it comes. So now the next thing that comes to us is that when we have LT comparison, because LT operation, basically this is nothing but just the less than operation that we are doing. Basically, what we are trying to replicate here, we are just trying to replicate how, or you can say we are just trying to customize that how the operations, or you can say how the common operations behave to our custom class when it was created. So all of this is basically to achieve the flexibility, or you can say customizable code, so that it can be done. Now, let me just show you how this LT or less than comparison operator works. So first, let's just comment this whole thing out, and let's try to run this. And it says, okay, there is no less than operand uh, works between the student and student object. Why is it so? Because at the backend, it's just some you can say some kind of class structure that is happening, or some kind of data, and of course it also has string. But actually, what it says is you can't directly basically put a less than, or you can say greater than operator between the S1 and S2 class, right? Now, what we are going to do is we are just going to define a less than operator. Okay, what I'm trying to compare is I'm trying to compare the student marks. That means whether S1 student have less marks than S2 student. Now, when we try to run this, we get true here. Why is that? Because we have defined a student S1 with marks 85 and S2 with marks 92. So when this it actually is true, so that's why it is returning true. While in the previous case, as you have seen that, so when we have uh, not defined this LT method, it returns us some kind of error. So so let us move on to our next method, and actually that we only have two method left with us, and that is del and length method, basically delete, and method to check the length of the functions or anything else. So let us try to mm, okay, let's see them together here. So these are the content that I prepared for you. So here comes the length method. What this method does is it basically defines uh, how to basically check the length of a student. So what this length method does is it basically used to define the behavior of a len function in your for your object. So essentially in Python, of course, you must have developed an intuition that why the render method exists is that we are basically trying to say to the interpreter of Python that okay, the piece of code that I have written is going to behave relative to some kind of inbuilt function or functionalities. That means what we are trying to do is we are trying to define, okay, this class is going to behave with, you can say, this particular inbuilt function like this. So this is all we are trying to define here. And that's the actual magic of this render method. So let's start with the this length function. So here, the class student, we have defined a length function and it is going to return the length of the name. Now, when I try to run this function, it is going to basically return the length of the name of the Rahul. So the Rahul name has 5 characters in it, so it returns 5. Why? If we don't have some kind of, you can say, length function or length method, we are going to get an error. And the similar way, the next thing that we are doing is we are just defining a delete method. Basically, how when we are deleting some kind of object of this class, what how this interpreter is going to return us. So this is something that we have defined. Okay, when you when user, you can say, when user trigger a delete command, then the interpreter should print something like, okay, the student Rahul is being destroyed. So with that, we have actually covered the most common render method that are present out there, and there are some more advanced render method that is present, and I'm just going to show you if you need it. While we are working on some advanced level, you can say advanced level projects. So until then, I'm just going to add it to your file. That okay, these are the exact render method that are present other than what we have seen. So the more advanced render method are that. So we can say the call function. It allows us to make a object callable, and basically what we are essentially trying to do is we can just make the function. You can say okay, we can create a class and make it callable. Think of it like this: we have actually created a class, or rather than telling you, let me show that. Let's say if I try to import, or let's say I'm trying to import from, what should I say? Yeah, let's show you some machine learning. Okay, for from sklearn dot preprocessing import label binarizer, and let us create an instance. Let's say lb. Now, when you see, okay, LB is going to be is created the instance, and we can do is something like this. Okay, so this is nothing but just a functionality. Now, let me show you is there is some kind of call function. As you can see, we can create it actually present here in the sklearn.preprocessing function. That means we can call the object as a function. So this is present in some kind of some you can say inbuilt classes. That's all. And and then we have iter. Basically, it going to enable us iterate through the object using loops and everything else. And about the iters and generators, actually I have covered that in our video. and you can watch it on the YouTube playlist. As you can see, we have actually covered that too. How to create some iterators as well as some generators. So that also we can define. And then we got the contains. That means if it is going to allow us to checking some kind of in operation, and that's all. And basically, what we have seen is why using the Dunder method. So these are the main, you can say, the reason for uh, creating a Dunder method or using a Dunder method. Basically, it helps us do some kind of operator overloading. Basically, customize how the operators like plus, minus, and multiply work with your objects. String representation define what happens when your object is printed or converted into a string. And also behavior customization, it helps us fine tune how object behave in specific situations such as comparisons, iterations, and error, and more. And then, okay, at last, let's close it with some kind of practice exercises for you. So, what you can do is you can just create a book class with attributes like title, price, and in that you can implement string as well as represent function or methods, and also basically just see it and try to replicate. We can try to complete this quizzes to get the better understanding. And let's try to see what we have seen is Dunder method are Python special methods to customize how object behave in specific situations. They allow operator overloading and much more. The common Dunder method include init, string, representation, add, and equal, and also less than. And these methods are essential for creating intuitive, reusable, maintainable Python classes. So with that, we have actually seen what are the Dunder method in our classes and how to define them and where it is used and what are the purpose of them. So with that note, let's meet in our next video. Thank you.